Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to be reacting to the list that Sam Quinn of CBS Sports put out, ranking all 30 NBA head coaches. He put them into tiers, so we're just going to be giving some thoughts on how he did with the list as a whole. So without further ado, getting into the first slate of teams here. For our video viewers, we are looking at tiers 9 through 7. There's 9 different tiers here. Ultimately, it is 30 JJ Redick, 29 Brian Keefe, 28 Charles Lee, 27 Jordi Fernandez, 26 Darko Rajakovic. Sorry for the mispronunciation there. 25 Chauncey Billups, 24 Billy Donovan, 23 JB Bickerstaff, 22 Doc Rivers, 21 Kenny Atkinson, 20 Willie Green, and 19 Jamal Mosley. So obviously JJ Redick, just because he has the Lakers job, because he's JJ Redick and he's a big name. Some fans might take offense to the fact that JJ Redick is ranked 30th. I don't think it's all that off base, given the fact that there is zero coaching experience that can give us a real gauge on how good of a coach he will be. Now, I think that he does have a lot of upside as a coach. I talked about this before. I kind of wish he went anywhere but the Lakers to start his career, because he's going to be in the pressure cooker from day one. But ultimately, JJ Redick, it's clear. If you listen to the Old Man in the Three or his podcast with LeBron James, JJ Redick knows ball big time, and I think that it's going to translate to the NBA. I think that he could definitely be a riser as the year goes on, but again, somebody who doesn't even have experience at the high school level or above, I believe is the case with JJ. I don't have a problem with Quinn putting him at number 30 on this list. Number 28, Charles Lee. Not going to spend too much time on the bottom of this list necessarily, but I'm a Celtics fan. I'm a very big fan of Charles Lee. He's coming off of winning a championship with the Celtics. He is a hard-nosed guy, very well-renowned. He was once with the Milwaukee Bucks as well, I believe, when they won in 2021, then was the lead assistant there, became the lead assistant with the Celtics last season, and I think that he has a chance to do some really big things with the Charlotte Hornets, who have been lacking culture these past handful of years. And now, additionally, I think that the Hornets have their hands on a couple really hard-nosed athletes in terms of Brandon Miller, who is a star in the making, in my opinion, and somebody that the Hornets can really build around. Takes a ton of pride on his defense just as much as his offense. And then they just drafted Tijan Salon with the 6th overall pick from France. A lot of NBA fans don't know a lot about him, but this guy is a grinder, and I think that the two of them together with Charles Lee and the intensity that he's going to bring, I think that he's at least going to be a culture setter for this Hornets organization that desperately needs it. Also want to give a little bit love to Darko, Jordi Fernandez here, where I think that ultimately, Jordi, I want to give credit to Darko because he had to deal with the tanking situation in Toronto last season, but I thought that there were, a number of times where he was able to sort of get that emotion out of his players, and another guy that I think could be a culture setter and I think could, jump up this list. But that was the tier 9 of We Don't Know Enough. Tier 8 here, Chauncey Billups, Billy Donovan, JB Bickerstaff, and Doc Rivers. Rivers at 22 feels low to me. Now, I understand not a popular coach with a lot of NBA fans whatsoever. I do feel like it's a little bit low, especially coming behind the promising young coaches tier ahead of him with Kenny Atkinson, Willie Green, Jamal Mosley. I'm a big fan of Jamal Mosley. I like Willie Green as well. I think that ultimately, what has Kenny Atkinson really done to prove that he's better than Doc Rivers? And again, yeah, sure, the Bucks were a worse team record-wise when Doc Rivers took over, but there's a reason why the Bucks ended up firing Adrian Griffin early in the season. It's because they weren't playing a winning brand of basketball. Now Doc gets a full year with Milwaukee. I think he is going to be better this year. Not saying I'd throw him into the top 10 or anywhere near that, but Doc at 22, a little bit low. And when you look at sort of this next tier as well. I mean, I look at somebody like Quinn Snyder sitting at 16. It's like, yeah, well, Quinn Snyder did definitely have some good years in Utah. And I was encouraged for the Hawks when they decided to hire him headed into, 2 seasons ago. But it hasn't shown me anything really in the past couple years. Jason Kidd as well, somebody that I do think that Kidd is sort of one of those polarizing NBA head coaches. Hard to put him at 18 considering that the Mavericks did make some serious adjustments in the second half of the season, but was that about Jason Kidd or was that about the talent that was actually on the roster? I think it was a little bit more so about their additions of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, but Kidd at 18, I'm not going to be too up in arms about it. The fact that Taylor Jenkins, though, and Michael Malone were this low on the list, that didn't sit great with me. And it's tough because you look at the names ahead, and it's not like, at this point, I think it does sort of go to show how much depth there is at coaching in the NBA. So, that's kind of one of the takeaways I got from this list as well, looking at all of it. But I feel like that they should have been maybe a little bit higher. And unfortunately, one of those names that I would have bumped down is Greg Popovich. I mean, it's tough. I totally understand where Quinn was coming from when he put this list together, that you didn't want to leave Greg Popovich out of the top half of NBA coaches, but it's just an interesting thing. Yeah, sure, the talent has been really, really bad surrounding the Spurs, so I'm definitely not going to knock Greg Popovich. He's one of the greatest NBA head coaches of all time, but we also saw in an NFL comparison here, which isn't totally fair, but Bill Belichick also having a huge hand in the way that the franchise goes about business, and ultimately, I don't even think it's that the game passed him by, and Greg Popovich is far more friendly and, with his players and everything than Belichick was at the end there, but might just, sort of be past the prime at this point. So I probably would have put Popovich a little bit lower. Please don't skewer me in the comment section there, but that takes us to the fourth tier here, which he calls the obvious floor raisers: Mike Brown, Chris Finch, Joe Mazzulla, Tom Thibodeau, Mike Budenholzer, and Ime Udoka. I would say that Joe Mazzulla being at number 11 feels disrespectful to some degree. Now, I understand not a ton of proven entity there, as with Ime Udoka as well, who I do think is one of the best coaches in the NBA. Yes, I know I'm a Celtics fan. I'm highlighting a lot of Celtics guys here. I promise I am an unbiased analyst here. But, I think it's interesting, and we're going to get into that third tier after this. But a lot of other young and unproven head coaches who haven't had nearly the same success. So I feel like, and having success, especially in the NBA, is sort of relative because it's so much about the player talent that you have. But I feel like Mazzulla, just the way that, and this is a proven season for him in general, because of the fact that he did just lose Charles Lee, his head assistant. Jeff Van Gundy was a senior advisor for the Celtics this past season. He's now moving on to the Clippers, so this is going to be more so in the hands of Mazzulla. I can't say I'm outraged by the fact that he's at 11, behind Tom Thibodeau. I agree. I feel like it's neck and neck with Ime Udoka, but I am also a big Udoka fan, even despite sort of the nonsense that took place at the end of his Celtics tenure. But I think he has a very bright future. But it does sort of pour me into this next tier here, where the third tier is just calls the Wonderkins of Will Hardy and Mark Daigneault. And both of them very good, promising young head coaches, but realistically, I mean, what have either of them done really up to this point? Will Hardy, another former Celtics guy, by the way, but I really like Will Hardy. I was sort of, especially after that Udoka situation, I was a little bit upset that Hardy was able to, walk away, because I would have definitely liked him as the replacement for Ime Udoka, but I think things worked out there in Boston, so can't complain too much. But him and Dagnall being where they are in this situation, I feel like Dagnall, and maybe it's that I don't know enough about the specifics of what he does, and if you are more familiar, definitely be sure to let me know in the comment section your defense of Dagnall. I just feel like he also has sort of benefited from having a very talented young team that hasn't necessarily been given that same credit until this past year when they were the 1 seed, and they haven't really done anything yet. Now, that's not a fair statement whatsoever. Chet Holmgren just played his first full season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is emerging as one of the superstars in the NBA. Jalen Williams continues to improve. So there's so much room to grow with this entire roster, and it's not fair of me to hold the Thunder to a higher standard than what they are. That being said, though, I also do kind of feel like the Thunder have been able to sort of skate by with very little expectations, even though they are talented. Now, from the 2023 season, big issue is that with Chet injured, they didn't even have a center. So I can't bury Dagnall all too much. I'm curious what makes him so special that already he's a top 6 head coach in the NBA, where he has also benefited from having overall a very talented team. So I would probably knock him down. It's not even that I'd knock him down. I just feel like when you look at, we'll sort of go back here for the visual viewers, between Will Hardy and Mark Dagnall and some of the coaches that were in that tier just below them of a Mazzulla, Thibodeau, Udoka, you could maybe even throw Chris Finch in there. I also love Mike Brown, but, I don't think that Hardy and Dagnall are a full tier above some of the guys that are in that 13 to 8 range. Now, if you have a counter argument, I'd love to hear it in the comment section. Not, married to these opinions, but it's maybe more so just confusion to me why Dagnall and Hardy get to already be just outside of the elites ahead of some of those other coaches that have shown a lot of success, especially Thibodeau. It's one thing if you want to bang on Mazzulla and Udoka, who don't have quite as much experience, Mike Brown as well, but Tibbs has been in the league forever and he's had a lot of success during that time. So, I feel like them being on different tiers doesn't really sit all that well with me. Tier 2, the elites, Ty Lue, Steve Kerr, Rick Carlisle, Nick Nurse, and then Eric Spoelstra on his own tier, understandably, at number 1 to close out the top 5 there. I don't have many complaints there. I do feel like Nick Nurse, and I really do like Nick Nurse, and I think I'm not upset by him being here whatsoever. It is a little bit weird to me that he's just sort of consensus number 2 when Nurse hasn't really done anything since the 2019 championship, where I think even more so impressive than beating the Warriors in the finals given the injuries was sort of innovating the wall to use against Giannis, beating what was to some degree a better team in the Philadelphia 76ers in the semifinals as well. But Sam Quinn, the author of this article, he also talks about how, even after they lost Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, they were still the number 2 seed in the East. Okay. That doesn't really move me. They ended up losing in the second round anyways. So I'm not really sure what the accomplishments for Nick Nurse within the past 5 years are. Now, he didn't necessarily get a totally fair shot anyways with the Sixers this past season, given the injury to Joel Embiid. They were on a pretty good pace up until that took place, but ultimately, I can't be too mad at it because I've been a Nurse fan for a lot of his career since taking over for the Raptors. But, I think overall it's a fine list. Maybe I look into making a list of my own. It's not totally fair of me to just sit here and criticize and not make my own. It's also NFL season, so I can't say I've been super in the weeds with NBA just yet. But that being said, we're just outside of a month away from the beginning of the 2024 season, which I am 24-25 season. So definitely looking forward to that. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will be back tomorrow afternoon with same time as always at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We will see you then. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.